Cheers, guys. Brand new podcast. Well, no, this will be a continuation, so not brand new, but the next one. If you are new here, don't be a doers. Go listen to number 34 and then get into it. Chris Winters again. We continue our conversation on all things electroculture and then just all things upon that, which is quite kiff. I enjoyed the fuck out of this episode, so I hope you do as well. Pop us a comment there. As normal, fucking like and share and follow and spam buttons. And yeah, let's do it. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Kackbrat Chronicles.
And I mean, it's kind of, I wouldn't say as far as electroculture goes, but as far as like paramagnetism and agriculture, I mean, the Irish were ahead of their time, or
Really?
ahead of everybody else's time, rather, right in time for them. But yeah, they created these big round towers that were basically big, large stone rock antennas of paramagnetic rock that would be in these fields, kind of seemingly unexplainable, and they would conduct paramagnetic energy into the soil, which is a lot of what is a component, at least, of what we're working with. Philip Callahan, who's an American farmer and author and scientist, wrote probably the most premier books about this topic back in the 90s. One called Paramagnetism, one called Exploring the Spectrum, another one called Sounds of Nature, and wrote a lot about these exact things, a lot of the experiments and stuff. So I have my electroculture practice, which is just tried and true. I mean, at this point, it's a staple. It's not peripheral. It's a cardinal point of what we're doing. But I'm still experimenting. I still do experiments with other things, and one of those is I do a lot of work with frequencies, which I'm pretty trained on as far as the human body. But I'm taking these same concepts and applying them in agriculture, much like the Qigong concepts.
Let's do that, because you
Yeah.
said now. I mean, for you, it started sort of like in the body as a whole. So how did you get into that? Because you've got this history of sort of like your Chinese. I don't want to get it wrong.
Traditional Chinese medicine
There we
is
go.
the umbrella, and that,
Yeah.
like I said, that includes like acupuncture and herbalism and all these things. But Qigong, which just means energy skill, is a practice that can be like a personal spiritual practice. They use it in martial arts a lot. Like whenever you see kung fu films and they're punching and a burst of blue light comes out of the fist and destroys it, that's qi, that's energy. That's from a martial arts Qigong practice. And they all usually go together. Most of the martial arts and the kung fu, the Chinese martial arts, were developed by reversing healing maneuvers by traditional Chinese doctors, doing Qigong work with energy. So they say, oh, well, if this heals, perhaps if I do the opposite maneuver, it will harm. So a lot of it was actually reverse engineered out of medicine. And that's why you find in the traditional dynastical systems, even up until the turn of the 20th century, you see most of the lineages of schools of kung fu and qigong being passed down like by trade. Like there'll be a doctor, a traditional Chinese doctor, and like let's say they know white crane style kung fu, and then maybe they have an accountant who helps them a lot on a financial end, and they'll trade. Oh, I'll teach your son kung fu for your accounting services. It's a lot of. It was very much a personal experience, and most of the schools were pretty closed door. And then you have kind of entering into the scene in the 70s, I guess, probably the wushu, which most people are more familiar with, and that's what most people know as kung fu wushu, which is more like fighting sport. Like the certified Olympic, nationally certified ordained version of kung fu that they could take to the rest of the world
Okay.
compete in these very standardized competitions, and most of the really good stuff is still very closed door. That's because it's dealing with energy. And when you're doing a physical maneuver, you're also accompanying that, or let's say the other way around, the physical maneuver is really there to accompany the energetic maneuver. And of course there's a whole personal morality, and that's why most of the time when someone's going to teach someone these things, they're choosy about who they teach, because they want someone who's not going to abuse it, you know.
Yeah,
um
that's an interesting factor of it, I think, because as you said, it is what I want to ask you about now is, can you explain a bit more about the reversal of sort of like one thing heals and one thing harms? How does that,
yeah.
I mean, what do you
Well,
mean when, how do they reverse it going from, okay, this heals, how do I weaponize this?
vortexes and the way that they spin. So let's say if this certain clockwise vortex accompanied by a certain color projection heals or tonifies an organ, then the opposite vortex direction with the anti-color. Anyway, a color is simply everything something isn't, because it's reflective of that color.
Okay.
So what you actually see in a color is everything that something is not. And then you identify the thing that it is not. You don't really
Yeah.
see anything that it is. You see the one thing perhaps it is not, light spectrum wise, at least.
Yeah.
So when you tonify, let's say, a certain organ, I don't want to say specific things on in this format, but like if you're attacking, I'm going to make something up. If you're attacking the right hand, and it heals the right hand, and this is not at all correct information. This is
Yeah. Yeah.
just
It's
for
just to the
if it,
sake of the
it
argument.
yeah, if it were to heal that part of the hand to project blue, or say red light in a clockwise direction, and you develop the skill to project counterclockwise energy in a green light, that's the opposite. So that would drain or make something deficient. And let's say you extend that to an organ as important as like the kidneys. Deficient kidneys that are too deficient is renal failure.
Yeah.
So then you get into some serious damage. That's where all these myths and things come from. There's very sensationalized versions like Kill Bill, where he does the 5 palm attack or whatever, and that's just simply based on certain points and certain maneuvers. Most of them aren't that technically complicated. They're more internally complicated, and they would take the ability to do the internal part of it and project outward more than it is a physical maneuver.
Well, okay, so I think that's the thing that I'm not understanding 100% maybe is because for
Who
me,
does?
and yeah, for me, I mean, let's take the liver. A liver punch is one of the most flippin' put you on your knees moments that you'll ever get if someone
Hmm.
punches you in your liver. But that's, for me, that's like a physical punch you in the liver and you go down.
Hmm.
How do you So how does that work? What will be the reverse of healing a liver, but the reverse of that is punching you?
So the liver is yuan shin, we call it original state. It's perfect state, because we have this soul that remains perfect, and then we have this corporeal self that interfaces with the world and is tainted by all of our traumas and stuff like that. We're trying to kind of get back home in
And
that
by
sense.
this.
Sometimes. A lot of things about alcohol are that, even, I mean, the word even comes from an Arabic word, al kul, which means the spirit. And that's the word spirits comes
Spirits, yeah.
from. But it's because the liver house what we call the hun, which are your 3 ethereal souls, your 3 perfect selves, right? And
Okay.
then you have the po, the 7 corporeal souls that live in the lungs. That's your animalistic self for survival, basically. So you want to be guided by the hun with the support of the po. But when you're not in parasympathetic mode, And when you're in fight or flight mode, you're led by the Po typically. So your Hun play a secondary role, and that's why I mean this is the basis of like again there's a lot of compounding variables in how people's behaviors go. Some people can drink all day every day and just live the most pious life there is. There's no one way of
Well,
anything.
I'm gonna take a sip of my drink and light a
Yeah.
cigarette while we're talking
Yeah,
about
yeah,
this.
yeah. But it leaves what happens is like say you have this classic scenario at least in American culture. I know in British culture it's probably the same, Western culture or whatever, where you go to the bar, you get hammered, you don't remember very well,
Mm.
and you do things out of character, whether that's
Yeah.
you say things out of character or you act out of character or you do things that you're not proud of or you do things that others aren't proud of, whatever the case. um, and that is because your Hun, they are offended by their home getting tainted there, and they bounce out, and that's out of body. Your memory isn't going to be the same, and you're going to be kind of open to inhabitants, let's say. And it's possible in certain realms of thinking that that is an invitation to be kind of inhabited by perhaps what one might call another spirit or entity. And I'm not even going to say bad or good because that's not really how I look at things.
Just
But
something else.
yeah, everything comes from the same source. So like when something confronts you as evil, it's usually reflective. And as long as you know that you're like comfortable and part of that same source as that thing, as that entity, it gives you more comfort to know that it's just unbalanced.
Is this something that you've learned and you know it? So for you in your reality, it's true, or is it something that you have experienced?
Both, intuition and experience are intimately linked. I mean, it's about as intimate as things can be. So you only understand that you have intuition when you experience the intuit, when you experience the thing that you were intuitive about. So, one supplies the other. There really can't be intuition without experience. Otherwise, it could be labeled delusion or just forethought or worry. Many people, and I only know because I've been there myself, it's easy to confuse worry with like intuition or thinking that you know something. They're very different feelings.
Where would you put anxiety on that scope?
That's in the heart. That's an unbalanced condition. So back to the liver. The liver's natural state is benevolence and kindness. Its damaged state, its corporeal state in a traumatic world is depression and sadness, which depression is just sadness turned inward.
Yeah.
It's yin sadness, and anger is yang sadness typically. But anxiety falls in the heart. The heart wants order. And I don't mean one specific type of order, but like divine order, you know. That's why a lot of people cling to orders that are created for them because their heart desires that order so bad, but understanding later on falling short usually because anything that has a label like in the Tao Te Ching, like basically the first kind of concept, and I don't repeat anything because it's simply in a book or because it's old. It's because it resonates truth with me. And
Yeah.
it did before I read it. And then you read something and you say, "Oh, that's a
Then it
great way
makes
of
sense.
saying how I've felt since I was a child," or something. Is that anything that can be named is already trash, basically. So the real path is a nameless path. So as soon as we can name it, it's kind of already ruined because we've given it limits. We've given it a name, a label, something that you can tarnish. You can't tarnish what you can't name.
Bloody hell. It's so early and you're blowing my mind already. I love it. I have to think about that. Wait, so just say that again.
You can't tarnish what you can't name. You can't do it wrong. You know, he who has no preferences is always at peace kind of idea. Now, I'm not saying I've mastered that. It's a goal, of sorts.
Is
It's a goal
is
of the spirit.
for me for me that sounds like you're saying like almost like are you okay? I know I'm not going to offend you because you know
Hmm.
I'm just intrigued by all of this.
Ignorance could be bliss.
And
Ignorance could be bliss.
that's exactly
And you
what I
know
wanted to
why?
ask you now.
I often say, well, many things I say a lot, but uh, a lot of times the quest for like knowledge and the quest for like inner peace, let's be a little bit cliche, are not the same paths.
Mm.
And you may have to choose at certain points. There are a lot of people who want both, and I probably fall in that category. And so um, it's important to know where to direct the energy and how much energy to give knowledge, how much energy to give inner peace, and to know that it's all perspective based, usually in the end, anyways, and that your mind is hopefully gonna change. You know, like I always hate to think that I'm like at the end of an exploration of something. It doesn't feel fun. You know.
No, but then in itself, I mean, there is no sorry, there is no end in exploration, though, is there?
Right. Well, no, hopefully not. And I think as soon as you say there is, then you're out of the whole realm of real science. You're out of the game once
But
you've said that's it.
there is a thing of when nothing, you can't draw a line. You cannot draw an accurate line. I'm trying to think of the exact words though, but I saw an interview with what's his name? Um, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, I
I
bet.
almost think it was a Joe Rogan interview where he
Hmm.
said, I think the conversation went in a way where some infinites are bigger than other infinites, and or some infinities or whatever. Can't remember the exact words. I sound like a fucking idiot now, but anyway, uh,
Yeah.
he he asked Joe how tall he is, and he said, well, let's say for argument's sake, he said 5'8". And he said, okay, well, are you 5'8" or are you 5'7 3/4"? And he said, well, that might be. And he said, well, okay, are you 5'7 3/4 and a little bit? And it's that thing of where by measuring something, you you tend to go infinitely in a way, because even the line you draw, is it a millimeter thick? Is it half a millimeter? And it's with a lot of stuff like that, it is the measurement itself. You can never measure something 100% accurately
Yeah.
with weight, with anything.
Truth is
And
unquantifiable, I think.
yeah, and it's the same thing as sort of like research or reading or whatever. Is you don't know. It comes back to that another cliche is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So there is infinite wisdom available on any subject. We can
There
never
is.
know 100% of everything.
Right. And I think where I like to try to delineate for myself is, why do I want to know something? Is it from my
Okay.
ego? If is it from my ego? Or is it so I can apply it? Just like the news, right? I have qigong patients in the past who are super jacked up, full of trauma, and they watch the news every day. And the first thing I'm going to tell them to do is turn that garbage off. Do not watch any media. Not anything that isn't just making you laugh, or that's totally silly or funny, or that's just fun. Like, turn off anything that's jacking your emotions up that isn't based in your reality. Don't watch a sad movie. You'll have plenty of time for sadness of your own. Don't waste that. That's gross. Um, Likewise, people often want knowledge of something for the news is, for most people, knowledge for the ego. They feel like it's a responsibility, let's say, to be informed about all these tragedies, with no intention of going to help any of them or do
Yeah.
anything about them. So if you don't have any intention to help, now if you got like resources and an open good heart and you're ready to go help places and you watch the news or something to see like, okay, where am I best needed, I guess that's cool. But like if you're watching it just to get information about other people's sufferings and you have no intent to help, it did those people no good and actually worsened their case because it put more energy into suffer energy. Form follows thought. So it's mass manifestation. It's why mass prayer works. It's why all these things work that are anomalous, is because enough people, I mean, in Western science, they call it like the 100th monkey effect, where they dropped, I believe it was sweet potatoes, clean sweet potato chunks on this island, an uninhabited island, except for these monkeys, right? They dropped them from a plane. The monkeys ate the sweet potatoes every time. They fucking loved them. Um, After like a year of this, they started dropping them over in this other area in this muddy sand. And the monkeys hated because they were dirty and they would not mess with them. They would not eat them. They took two monkeys off the island, taught them how to clean sweet potatoes in water, took them back, released them. Those two taught the others. Simultaneously, on another island, they dropped sweet potatoes and the monkey started washing them. It's because this shared wave of consciousness.
Wow.
And I'm not backing that experiment up personally. It's a very
Yeah.
well-known experiment. Um, but that's just another way to explain what I'm trying to say. And I'm talking more about millions and multi-millions of people thinking the exact same thing. It's my personal thought that the news, meaning northeast, west, south, it's a broadcast in all four directions, um, is an intention based programming on what would like to be seen manifested. And then everybody makes it so by watching it and thinking about it. I think it works like that.
This does resonate with me for the simple reason about 12 years ago, 10, let's call it 10 years ago. Where are we now? 2023. Yeah, about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I decided to cut my television. We've got a thing in South Africa called DSTV, which is like cable TV. You get it's on a satellite, but let's call it cable TV, where you've
Yeah.
got like 900 channels or whatever.
Yeah. It's just crazy.
And I cut that for the simple reason, at that point, for the simple reason was I'm farming. I'm outside of my house for 90% of the day. And then I come home and then I cannot find a single thing to watch on those 900 channels.
Yeah.
It costs a shitload of money, so I stopped it. And I quickly realized that because I don't watch the news, like you said now, I'm not aware of bullshit that happens, whether it be good or bad, but bullshit that happens on the other side of the fucking planet. That's
Yeah.
got nothing to do with me. I cannot change a single thing. And I've, in the last, like, call it 2 years, I've realized that if I make a point of cutting stuff out of my life in terms of like whatever's happening in the Middle East now, or what's happening between Russia and Ukraine and all of that, it's sad. It is sad, but I cannot do anything about it. And all it does is it fucks up my day. And it sounds very selfish
No,
saying
let's,
that, but
yeah.
I cannot. It's sad to know that those people are dying and suffering, but I cannot do anything about it. And I feel like it takes away a small amount of brain power to watch that and to take in all of that information. There's a lovely quote. I don't know where I heard it, but the guy basically said, "I tend to the garden that I can touch,
Mm.
and I look after my family." And 95.78% of my brain capacity goes into tending to my garden, which is right here. I don't worry about anything else.
Yes, and we're saying the same thing, and I think we're coming from the same place, and I think it can be taken as some sort of oh, you're just avoiding reality, or you're just being what's the word? Not complacent, but ambivalent to the situations, or as not at all. I would rather put, like you said, the garden you can touch. So, anywhere I can actually help, or like help somebody, or in public, in person, through any channel that I can actually do something, like I'm wide open for that. And look for it. Look for ways to help. Look for ways to be kind. Um, that serve me in no other way, but just that's the way I feel it to be. I'm just fulfilling my own intuitive drive, or whatever you want to call it. My own feeling of being compelled to be that way at those times. So it has nothing to do with looking away. We're I think anyone who's got half a brain is well aware that there's like enough tragedy
Yeah.
everywhere, like plenty tragedy. Like you could look in any direction, you could walk in any direction from your home and find it within a day. you know you're gonna find something that you can be a part of if that's what you need. You know what I mean? Like if you need sadness that you're not getting at home, go look for your neighbors.
Yeah.
They probably got some sadness you could help with. Why watch a movie about it and cry about some fake shit like on a movie or something? I don't like it. It's taking advantage. It's intentional. It's intentional to jack everybody up emotionally, and it used to be just the things that, at one point where it was just the things that you were right around. And I think that's probably why there's periods of time that were such prolific times of advancement and I won't even say progressive, but just progressive, forward. And I say that in the truest sense, meaning like it was truly different thinking paradigms and whatnot. It really flourished during times when, you know, we didn't have so much expansive peripheral traumas trying to enter our narrative constantly.
I, I often wonder, and I think this might be another cliche, but I think it's because life has become so easy. Life has become so simple. I mean, nowadays you don't have to go to a shop. You can order everything online. You can
You
get it
got to
delivered,
challenge yourself at this point.
and that's why I think humans as a life form need struggle. We do need to face some difficulty in life, and
Yeah.
because we don't have that anymore. Now, okay, I'll also mean this in I do understand that there's people in the world that face tremendous struggles every day.
There's just everything across the board.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I think most people living in sort of like a Western type lifestyle don't have any struggles, and we tend to make struggles. We make our own puzzles to solve because we don't have any puzzles anymore, and that's why we create all of this bullshit. That's why we watch sad
Well,
movies or whatever, because
that's other people's puzzles, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like your own puzzles might be worthwhile, but people like to latch on to people's puzzles that they can't actually be there. Like it has there's no responsibility to it, you know. It's like people who are purely skeptical produce nothing. That's a really secure way to preserve their intelligence.
Yeah,
Just act
yeah,
skeptical about everything. And then you appear intelligent, yet you produce nothing.
you produce nothing. Yeah,
Yeah. Yet you actually do nothing, because anybody who's a co producer or a producer as well will have enough knowledge base to understand where you're at. It's only the unintelligent who criticize those who are doing. And then otherwise,
no, they
there's
don't do anything else.
exactly.
Let's let's put a positive spin on this.
Yeah.
The oaks that farm around you, that see you on a daily basis or weekly basis or whatever, how do they react to your way of farming?
All my neighbors, well, first of all, I'll say that unfortunately, not a lot of people farm anymore. Um, a lot of people that even have farmland lease it to like one or two other, three other people who have kind of big, you know, they farm other people's land. You know,
Okay.
it's a tradition. Um,
Yeah.
like my grandmother grew up as a sharecropping cotton farmer in Georgia during the Depression, the Great Depression, and they had to sharecrop all the land they owned. Like they made no money. You know what I mean? It's the same. It's the same system. But so first off, there's not a whole lot of like agriculturalists.
Okay.
It's a lot of sons and grandsons of agriculturalists who have a grasp of what you're doing, and they kind of grew up in that way, but they all have a job in town or in the nearest town, or you know they don't really
Okay.
live that same, or they, you know, they might do tractor work for the county, or so it's a rural environment but not a lot of farming. Like
Yeah.
there's communities other places, like I know in like rural Vermont, where it's just like small farm after small farm, you know. And there's even areas here in Middle Tennessee, like south of Nashville, where there's more like clusters. But back to to the real question, I do have a couple neighbors who are farmers, and we get along really well. We have from the beginning. I mean, partly because when I came into the area, like I knew I was the new guy, and I'm very respectful and very kind, you know. Now we're really not. Then we're, you know, we've been around for a minute. I have neighbors who are conventional farmers now, or one neighbor, particularly my closest proximity neighbor, who will even call me for advice on how to do his strawberries organically, how to avoid using certain products. They're respectful for the most part. Like they don't really do their stuff right up on our property line, and even he's moved it back further since I've been here.
Okay.
Um, and they do very minimal agriculture. Like they kind of like grow like a crop per year, and they kind of rotate what that is, you know,
Okay.
on like a 70-acre parcel. Um, all my other neighbors are more so like grew up around here and grew up with their fathers being very agriculturally based, and we get along great. I mean, honestly, like they're very open minded in a different way. There's some things that, you know, like I know sometimes like I'll be back here like working in very little clothing because I love the sun. Like I'm very much like I want the sun on my body. Like
Yeah.
not scared. I'm not scared of it. I'm not worried about the sun. Like skin cancer comes from toxins from the inside. So the sun is just there to show you. You know, the sun is like your, hey, you're messing up right here. Look at it. And so it's like you have to, like, the sun is the messenger, you know, and everybody wants to demonize the messenger, but like
That's
the
very
message,
interesting.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
never heard it quite that
Mm.
way.
And wearing sunglasses makes everything worse because you get all the light signals through your eyes, and when you're in the sun, your skin produces biochemicals like melatonin, or sorry, melanin, and other chemicals that protect you from the sun while you're in it. But if you wear sunglasses in the sun, you're not getting that. So like in this culture that I'm in, at least most of these dudes, they go out, they lather up with some sort of chemical lotion, and then they put the sunglasses on and they go bake that chemical lotion into their sun with no natural sun protection that they could have if their eyes were open or not covered.
Yeah.
So it's dynamic, man. It's dynamic. There's so many things that we're told that, but they also tell you in Western just propaganda, you know, cover your eyes, cover your skin. So it's no wonder, you know. But yeah, though my neighbors are all really nice people, and I find that in general, my rural community out here, and I say that loosely. It's not a really strong, large community. It's very loose and just we kind of know who you know. And I've lived in other rural places, like in California, where it was very much more an organized rural community. They had like a local grange, and people met up there, and it was very. They had events, and I really like that here, um, in my specific area. But
Okay.
we're about an hour north of Nashville, so it's like our county, all the counties that border Davidson County, which is Nashville's county, kind of have become very populated, even though they were once very rural, you know?
So, okay, you've obviously got, as you said, now, I mean, a good relationship with the neighbors and all of the people around you.
Oh,
Are
yeah.
there are there any of them that sorry, I've got a itch in my ear. Are there any of them that use some of your antennas and stuff?
I have farmers, and actually he's also an electrical engineer by trade. I have people who use them nearby, not necessarily my direct neighbors, but in the area. Yes. At this point, since I spoke with you last, I've sent antennas to many continents, many places.
Really?
Yeah, lots to Australia, lots and lots to Australia. That's probably my biggest point of sales as far as just the volume of antennas. All over the U.S. Just I'm waiting on some information because I have her order ready, but I have an order here going to Hull, which is
Really?
nearby. Yeah.
Wow.
Couple antennas going to Hull. I've sent some to Belgium, Austria, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, lots to California, Hawaii, um, Indonesia.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty cool, man. I've people using them more internationally than even right here around my zone. But that's just because that's just circumstantial. To be quite honest, most of my neighbors have no idea at all what I'm doing. I only have a couple that I really speak with on that level, and they're really interested in it. They'll come show up out of the nowhere just to come chat. Um, and a couple of them are electricians, and they know they understand what I'm doing. Also, there's a lot of intrinsic knowledge that gets passed down growing up multi-generational in a rural environment, and they understand some of these energetic concepts on a practical level better than even some like more scholastically trained people who might understand electromagnetism just because they've witnessed for themselves the anomalies, like why does the lightning keep striking that pile of limestone by the barn and not all these tall trees and stuff. Why is it and so why does it keep striking this? So they understand, and that's because there's paramagnetic and diamagnetic values like negative and positive. Because lightning is a spark gap between those two charges. It doesn't come from the sky or from the earth. It is the
Yeah.
charge between them. And so they understand some of these principles just through their interface with nature, versus someone who maybe went to a really nice school but spends all their time in the city. And like I grew up in the city, and it took spending a decade or plus out here to really, and then I lived pretty rural before we lived here, but it took retraining, you know, they got street smarts, but there's rural savvy. You got, so if you can get a little bit of both, that's probably ideal. But in this world, there's a lot of information that if you grow up in an urban environment, you just don't get it because it really doesn't apply to you in your life
Yeah.
unless you seek it out. But it's kind of intrinsic knowledge out here amongst people, and it's the knowledge of value is just how it's applied. So like you can't say certain information is more valuable than other information because there's like this kind of cultural and subcultural phylum of information, and it's like, well, that type of information, like knowing how to work on a computer is way more valuable than knowing how to properly plow a wet field. Well, not really. It's all about, are you going to apply that? How are you
Yeah.
applying that? And how are you applying this? It could be, because I'm not saying it's dogmatically fixed one way. It's about the value of what you do with the information. It's about, the creation glorifying the creator, not the other way around. So it's like, what did you actually do? Let me see it.
Yeah. What do you
You know?
use it for?
Yeah,
I
what do
mean,
you do with it?
I
Yeah.
might have knowledge about airplanes, but if I never fly a plane, it's useless information.
And you're welcome to accumulate it, but you can't look at it as that valuable.
It's more important than anything
Yeah,
else.
you're welcome to accumulate worthless information. We all have free will in that way. And we all do it. I will accrue some information that I probably don't need sometimes, but um, I compensate that by, if my memory wasn't good, I probably wouldn't, like I usually remember what I need to remember. There's just, there's a parable in Chinese medicine about, you probably have heard it. It's almost the most cliche parable, but the empty cup parable.
Yeah.
A cup is empty because useful because it's empty, and when it's empty, and because it's full. And so sometimes you have to empty the cup again to make it useful in that way again. If it's just always full, forgetting is important.
That's
Forgetting
it.
is critical.
It is. I think it is an interesting aspect of sort of accumulating knowledge. Is I tend to, might be stupid, but I tend to pride myself on knowing a shitload of useless information just because it's fun.
Well, that's why I call ego knowledge, because it brings the pride out.
Yeah, yeah, most likely because I I'm immediately thinking now of the I love how we just running on cliches at this point,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
I like, because I do think that a lot of people know a lot of sayings like, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but they don't know the full saying, because the saying doesn't stop there. It's not a jack of all trades is a master of none. It goes further than that. And if I'm correct, it says, but wait, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes more useful. Wait, fuck, now I lost it. But it basically says it's oftentimes more useful to know a little bit of a lot of things than to know a lot about one thing.
And that's trades, though, because trades means he's applying the knowledge.
Yeah.
If you said like a jack of all just knowings, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
I
Having a vast wide variety is essential.
and it's like there's no intrinsic value that I can put money next to all of my knowledge about, and I almost feel like saying knowledge is not the right word, because it overshoots it, because it's useless information. But it tends to be worth a lot for me, especially in terms of this podcast, because
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
I know a little bit about penguins, and I know a little bit about
Well, then it's not
this and
useless.
that, and then it's not useless.
No,
There's
yeah.
no monetary value to it, but it's
we're
not
we're
useless.
we're only going to be able to know what that useless information was truly when our life is in review, because until then you may find a use for it. If we judge it now, time is not linear, it's circular, so we've been everywhere all at the same time. And so maybe our other self knows that we need to know this when we get to that point in the circle, and so we go ahead and learn it now. And that's the complementary nature of circular time. That's intuitive. That's what intuition is. It's picking up on a circular timeline, not the linear timeline, which entraps you between birth and death. Those are the two biggest slavers of mankind. um, and so, if we live in the linear timeline then and work toward the center, then that's, we work with the information of the past and the intuition of the future while remaining in the present and working toward that center.
That's a mouthful. This is my most enjoyable part of any conversation, is when we get to this, because I absolutely love talking about stuff that we do not 100% have an answer for, that we do not know this is going to happen. And me and you in our previous conversations have spoken about this, and I think this is part of the previous episode that got lost, is I do think that there's more going on than what we really like intrinsically know. And it is that thing of, I think I did tell you, now this is the difficult part of the podcast for me, because I'm not sure if I should I say that we've spoken about it, because I can't remember if we spoke about it. But anyway, let me tell you what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very out there. I think we are all the same person. And this is now very foofy, but I think we all the same person just a few decisions removed. So
Mhm.
I decided to go left, and that is my reality onwards. From this point, it branched out, and this is now me. When I end this conversation, my reality of you, my interpretation of you ends. You cease to exist then in my reality. In your reality, me and you are the same person, but you decided to go right, and that's your reality.
Sure.
And I tend to sort of, I think in the same way as you, where it's circular, where I think we all need to learn a certain amount of stuff. We all need to take in a certain amount of information and go through certain stuff, blah blah blah, and then at one point you get to that 100% completion, or you never do, or it's infinite, or I don't know what happens then. But I think it is sort of like we're in this loop, not
Mm.
necessarily loop, but I don't know that
It's lessons, you know, it's lesson after
yeah.
lesson. And I think the best way I've heard it explained or expressed is you keep learning lessons that sometimes the same ones over and over if you need to. But you learn the lessons over and over through multiple lifetimes, through multiple manifestations, however you want to see it. But the lessons are ultimately leading you to have a heart free of hate. And I think when that is accomplished, then maybe you can move. Maybe you can, if there's a level, if there's another level, I don't know. I don't have a dogma concerning that. But if you feel there's another level of existence past this one, then maybe that's the opportunity where you get to try that out. Um,
What do you reckon happens when, for argument's sake, as we know it, when you die? What do you reckon happens?
I don't. I don't
You don't
reckon that.
have a, you
No,
don't have
no,
an,
no.
okay.
Because my projection of that, of course, I've thought about it, but I don't have a theory. I want to leave it as open and nameless as possible, like as free. I
Is it
think it's
because
important.
it,
I think it's important to focus on the present because I think that will take care of itself. I've learned just enough from farming that when I jump the gun and I start trying to project myself into the future, not in a way of like not like astral projection, but like, you know, like projecting my concerns,
yeah,
projecting my worries into the future,
worrying
that
about the day of tomorrow?
that's bad for your spleen. um when your spleen is in unbalanced states, then you have less trust of divine order, you have less trust of intuition. uh these are all things that happen to your body, like physically, based on your emotional state. um and it doesn't have to be thought of with dread. You could think of what happens when you die with pure bliss too. It could be, oh, I'm gonna magically be in this spot. There's gonna be like, you know, like top level chronic, and you know, it's got whatever's going down. But you know, I don't actually, if I'm being honest, I don't have a single thought. I think for me, I think most of the people I've been around the most who've thought about that the most, it's because they have fear around it. That's not everybody's case.
Hmm.
I've been around plenty of people who are like not fearful of death in that way, but I don't want it to be based on fear, and I don't think there's much to worry about. I think it's all about an active movement now and always. And then that part is kind of autonomous. It's kind of you know, autonomic, like kind of like is
Yeah,
what I
you'll
mean,
do it
like
when you get there.
automatic. Yeah, yeah, like you know, that that beautiful sermon, I don't know who it was that delivered it, where they're talking about, you know, the name of God is, you know, the breath in and the breath out. It's the first word you say, it's the
Oh
last
yeah,
word you
yeah, yeah.
say. You know, that's what I mean. It's like it's effortless connection. Everybody's looking for meaning, but you give the meaning. you provide the meaning to life. It's not exterior of you or provided by anyone else or some dogmatic channel of teachings. That's the whole, that's where everybody ends up when they go through any sort of mystery school, you know, at the end of the day, that's where you're going to end up, with just you, with just that dot in the circle. That's why it's the first symbol, you know. It's that's it. So what did you create in your field? You know, what did you create in your, and it doesn't have to be a physical item, obviously. It can be purely energetic. When people bring things to the table, so to speak, it doesn't always have to be food, you know. But the worst thing is if someone comes to the table, criticizes the table, but also brings nothing,
Brings nothing. Yeah.
then it's like that's what you find mostly amongst like people who are purely like skeptical of everything, which I don't really encounter very often. So I tend to drive those
I
people away.
I think I'm a bit different than you in that aspect where
I hope so.
I love talking, or not talking. I love thinking about stuff like that, where I love to create little scenarios in my mind of, because, like I said, because it's unknown. We don't know what
Yeah,
happens,
yeah. It's the
and
unknown unknown. I mean,
it's almost like either way, it gives you a chance to do the most that you can do. Because if it's infinite, then you've got so much time to learn all that you can learn and do all that you can do. If it's not infinite, if it's you've got 80 years and then it stops, then it's almost like the same. Then you've got limited time to learn all the things that you can learn and do all the things that you could do. So it's almost like it doesn't matter what the
yeah,
outcome is, whether you've got infinite amount of time or a limited amount of time. You need to do the most of it that you can. And that's kind of kiff to me. That's like, that's very, once again, it's a very hoo-ha, foofy, fucking what. But it's kind of cool, because it kind of comes back to, I think what you said earlier with, I think when we were talking about like your liver having three souls, and
well, they reside in the liver.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it's it's I feel like it's you have to decide at some point what you're going to give light to,
yeah. Hmm.
whether it's infinite or not, is and like I said, it's a double-edged sword, in terms of, you can either go, hoopla, life has got no meaning, I can do whatever I want.
Hmm.
But then you tend to go, well, somewhere you're going to fucking learn a lesson, and then you're going to have to do it again.
Yeah,
Do you want to do it again? I feel like
yeah,
that's kind of the question, is, do you want to try and do it right the first time? Do you know how to do it right the first time?
yeah.
Who knows? We
Yeah,
all
and
try and do our best.
is there a right or wrong? It's just,
And is there
I
right
mean,
or wrong?
there is, I think, only because we know what it feels like when we do what we call wrong. That's how we know. We don't know because someone told us. We don't know because there's a book of rules. I was born and signed no agreements. So, you know, even my name is hearsay. You know, I didn't sign that.
I love that. Even
I
my
wasn't,
name is hearsay. I
you know
love
what I
that.
mean? That's I know who I am as a living soul, but that's it. That's as far as my knowledge goes, as far as
Okay,
true understanding.
but wait now, because this is interesting for me. I feel like everyone does have a intrinsic value of right and wrong,
Yeah,
even if no one has ever taught you something.
that's what I'm
If
saying.
I go out and kill someone, let's not do like hunting or anything. If I go kill another person, I've never. How can I make this point now? Okay, I've never seen anyone. I've been dropped somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I've never seen another person, and I go up to someone and I kill him. I'm pretty sure I'm going to feel bad about it.
Oh yeah, You feel bad if you slingshot a bird as a kid. I mean, you know,
But
you
will
feel
I though? See, that's the thing
well.
is, do we do is something like murder? Is murder? Are you taught at some point that it's wrong, or will you, if you kill someone, will you feel like that was wrong?
I think that you will feel that. Whether you know what label to put on that feeling is a little bit more driven by societal nuance. What you feel and what you label as a feeling perhaps are two different things. You know, what something is and what it's made of or what it's called are often very different concepts. I think we discussed this before, even. You know, they would say the sun is these gases. So we know the sun is much more. What it's made of or what it's called, the sun, who came up with that? You know what I mean? Like we could call it
Bleh.
Beetleboo or yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
It is what it is. So labels, again, labels confuse reality, um, as do definitions of you know, even in the medical world, it's known, you know, I've touched on this in some of my videos in my recent blog, how even medicines are known. The benefit is not because of the chemicals simply that are in them, like drugs, even like modern pharmaceuticals. It's because of the poles of electricity that these certain chemicals set up for different electrical flow of the body. So everything parts hydrogen or pH is a result of electrical action. So like when farmers are testing soil, they're fixed on
Hmm.
pH. They're fixed on a byproduct of an overall action. And they could cure all the issues if they focused on the big problem, right? Like you might be drinking little teaspoons, just a metaphor, you know, an example. Let's say you're drinking thimbles full of antifreeze and it's causing your organs to fail, and your organ failure causes your hand to be cold, and you put your hand in hot water to fix it all. That's the analogy of this medical system.
Yeah, it doesn't fix the main thing. It
Covers a
fixes
symptom.
yeah, it fixes a symptom. It doesn't
It,
fix
it,
the
it
cause.
mitigates one peripheral symptom of many usually. Uh, even if you know, a lot of times if you were to correct the overall problems you didn't even know you had would be remedied, and then you would identify it in reverse and be like, oh, that must have been off because now I see what it's like when that's on. I see what it's like when that nitrogen is fixing properly, or I see what it's like when my kidneys are functioning properly. I have all this energy. I didn't know what that felt like before because my kidneys, I had just known what it was like gradually and over time to feel deficient kidneys, you know. So people can become used to almost anything, you know. I mean, there's levels of discomfort and pain that I know some people have, and they don't show it constantly, and it it's impressive and also just bewildering because I'm just like, wow, you've become used to that level of pain, and that's, I mean, good for them. I just mean that's what it's an example of, you know, people become used to very low levels of like energy output and energy, and that's just how you're supposed to feel, are constantly feeling digestive issues and thinking, well, that's just how you're. I grew up kind of thinking
Yeah,
you're always supposed to be nauseous.
yeah.
And I was like, oh no, you just don't do those things and you're never nauseous. Like, oh, okay. But I, you know, as a kid, you know, I thought, oh, you know, you go looking for some sort of carbonated drink around 10:30 a.m. to cure the nausea from the morning because you ate some bullshit late at night because no one told you that wasn't, that, you know, it's not whether you can or should or shouldn't. It's just like, how do you want to feel? It's a choice everybody's got to make for themselves. It's not like
I feel
there's no
like
rules.
I feel like every single thing we've spoken about now and in the, let's call it the previous episode, it all draws back to polarity. It all draws back to a positive and a negative somewhere. And that for me is very interesting because every single, like I said, every single thing we've spoken about can be drawn back to that. And that is, I feel like, the main thing that makes me, I don't want to say it's not that it makes me believe in what you do, because I don't think what you do is up for belief or not. It's understanding how
Yeah,
it
more so.
works. And I I I want to ask you now on that. You said that some of the people that you work with and that's come to the farm and whatnot are electrical engineers and or have a background in sort of like electrical sort of like degrees or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What do they say when you tell them, listen here, here's this thing, like the one that's standing there behind you.
Yeah, can you see
Um,
it? Yeah.
here's this thing, to put it very sort of like to dumb it down. Here's this thing, put it in your ground, put it in the soil, and your tomatoes will just grow. Give.
Yeah. So that is
How,
kind of
do
I'm
they just
sorry.
go, no, this is not gonna fucking work? Or do they go, oh no shit, this actually makes sense?
Yeah, so one or two people with those backgrounds. I've had a couple customers that I have not met with those backgrounds as well that I've sent equipment to, but um the main friend of mine who came out who has a like 40 years plus like industrial electrical systems and then currently runs an electrical company, but is also also him and his wife run a pretty decent sized little farm growing produce and sell it to some local places. So that's kind of feed in both worlds. And
Yeah.
originally just came out to do some electrical work for us last year and saw what we were doing. And I ended up talking to him at some point, or actually no, they asked if they could come out on like a tour because they really wanted to see just how we were doing our things. And while they were here, I was bringing up that topic of electroculture, and he had never heard of it. And he went after that and did like months of just kind of deep diving on his own, and then kind of came back to me and he was like, "Yeah, you know what? This is the thing." So he's got some stuff setting up, and he came out when I first got all my antenna designs really dialed in. I had him kind of go through them, give me some tips on maybe some things I could do better with the wiring and the mounting. Basically, a lot of tips on insulating from the mounting hardware, a lot of insulation tips. And so I've gone, it was great knowledge. I definitely took it and
Is
probably
that
overdo
sorry?
it.
Is sorry
No, go
to
ahead.
interrupt you. Is the insulation just to make sure that you can draw as much as you possibly can into
Yeah.
the soil?
Yeah, so you don't get what's called bleed out. So you don't get current running off. Like you could have it where the antenna touches the pole, and that can be a wooden pole too, because wood is conductive when it's
Yeah,
wet. Or it could be even internal circuitry. So the internal circuitries are all super insulated, as well as the mounting aspect. So it's a bunch of stuff like that that I needed to be probably a little more thorough with, and I took it to heart. And that was in the early days of like designing antennas, and I super into insulating everything. And anyways, but yes, anyone I've spoke with who has a good grasp of electrical engineering or frequency, sound engineers, people who deal with frequencies and electromagnetic energy flows and oscillators, oscilloscopes, and frequency generation, and people who have a lot of experience with agriculture, they all kind of at their core understand what I'm doing
yeah,
in their own way sometimes, but I can speak their languages as well as like and people in the medical qigong world and the qigong traditional China, they get it too because I can express it through their
yeah,
language. So I think the important thing is being able to express to speak the languages of the people that at least you're trying to reach. I've lived in many other countries in the world. I quickly try to learn languages wherever I go, because if you want to be communicated with and you want to be like respected and taken
yeah.
seriously, you've got to learn languages where you are. I just like it. I love languages. So for me, even when I get customers, I have a lot of people in Brazil who want information. They don't have information there. A lot of the books and stuff that we have in English didn't get published in Brazilian Portuguese and stuff
Of
like that.
course.
So
Yeah.
I try to help some of that. I'll try to like translate things into Brazilian. I'm driven to do it when I have where I have time to do it. Um, But yes, definitely the people who are in those worlds seem to get it the most because they intrinsically understand the basis of the concept of alternating current and fluxing polarities. Um, so that's all we're really dealing with is microcurrent AC voltage um, with free energy.
Have you ever had some of these, like I said, like a electrician or whatever, some other guy with electrical background? Have you ever had some of these like coming to you saying, "Listen, what you're doing is utter bullshit. It doesn't work. It's it just I've got this knowledge and what you're doing is bullshit." Have you ever had that pushback?
I mean, a little bit, not exactly in those words, but more or less a couple times. I mean, you can tell by their language skills, and then you'll look at their own profile, and it's always some like incel type, like knucklehead who's probably just mad at their own life,
Mm,
working some job they hate and they're mad at, or like maybe they're like a little bit not right, like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
No, I've definitely had a couple. I had this one guy going on forever in the very beginning. I mean, just saying weird shit too, like basically warning me not to spend my work time with my hobbies and stuff, just weird stuff. And I found out he was quoting some book. It's actually a book called The Lean Farm, which is a popular book from the kind of mid 2000s, written by this farmer in Indiana, I think, who had used to work at like a Nissan or a Toyota factory and then started farming and kind of like based his model off of the factory model. And I'm like,
I don't
that's nothing
know.
I'm interested in, brother. Like, and anyway, yeah, you get knuckleheads, man, but I've never had anyone whose opinion I valued say anything like that. Just like, and I've never had anyone who actually tried it say anything like that. And I've never had anyone who actually grows plants say anything like that. You might have really, I can't even think of maybe one or two electricians have commented over the last many months, like at some point. It's been a while, but there's definitely been a couple kind of things in that realm. But I don't deal with it. I don't respond. You just get blocked.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
don't
that's the
even.
best way to
I
do it.
waste no time. You see
Uh,
on the top of my Instagram page it says "Fosse free," strictly for the lovers. You know what
mm,
Fosse means? It's a Jamaican term, but it means crusty petulance.
okay.
So like no bullshit. Like I'm here from my experience,
Yeah.
and that's it. Like you can go start a page about how much my stuff is whack and run it and like make your post and do all that. Get you know what I mean? Like you go put your
Yeah.
effort into your thing. I'm gonna put my energy into my thing. Now I respect thoughtful criticism or something that seems like it's coming from a place of love. That's all I'm concerned with. You can actually think my stuff is the worst thing ever if you're coming from a place of like kindness. I really don't care because I'm not doing it for that reason. Like I produce vegetables for a living. That's what I do to make money.
Yeah.
So like I'm a farmer. Like, I mean, I've been doing that for 12 years nonstop. I have not spent one night away from this farm, and that's what it takes basically. And we produce so much food here. We call it violent abundance. I mean, it's insane.
I
So
like that violent
and
abundance.
it's all way beyond any possible organic standards. I'm using frequencies to control weeds. I mean, it's like it's all done with rock minerals and vegetable waste compost. So people
Uh,
call that
take take
veganic.
me in take me into that because that's something that we didn't cover in the previous episode. That I've seen now in the last
Yeah,
month
yeah.
or so on your Instagram page that you use these frequencies. Now, how does that work?
Well, I was trained in radionics, frequency medicine and stuff by my kung fu teacher inadvertently. And just kind of agreed to apprentice him in many long-term experiments over years, and would learn kung fu from him also. Um, Kind of something I didn't seek out to learn, but I did, and got into dowsing very heavily and dowsing using frequency generators and
What's what's
photographic
dowsing?
dowsing. Dowsing is like location. So people douse for water to find the source of water with the sticks, you know.
All right.
We use to find anything. The water is just one thing you can find. The word sorcerer comes from the man who found the source of the water. It's magic.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the dowsing, and there's all kind of there's dowsing with the dowsing rods, the sticks, witch hazel is what they would use, but most people use like copper and brass rods. They're very conductive to bioelectricity. There's also pendulum dowsing, which I'm way more proficient at, holding pendulums in a very specific manner over certain things. Now, when we use frequency generators, we're using Hieronymus devices. So we're using devices to shield and block out certain bandwidths while checking for others. It's very complicated, and it's something that I was fortunate enough to get a lot of exposure to and understand, at least to a point, to be able to apply to many things that I'm interested in personally. My teacher in that manner is a savant compared to what I know. And so I used these things for many years operating a Spooky 2 machine, which is a machine for health.
Just say that again. A what machine?
It's called a Rife machine, Dr. Royal Rife, but the brand of the machine and the most popular device is called a Spooky 2. And it's in reference to an Albert Einstein quote about quantum mechanics. And the quantum mechanics he referred to as the spooky action in the distance.
I feel like they should give it a better name than a Spooky 2,
well,
because
people like it, man. People like it's got a picture of a ghost as the
I feel like that makes it sound a bit
I'll tell you, interestingly enough, Germany and South Africa are two of the most prolific places of these machines being operated, because but South Africa's and Germany's medical laws allow for these machines to be used in official treatments, whereas ours do not. We have to do it in a different way.
Well, what do these machines do? These spooky machines?
Well, they just generate frequencies and collections of frequencies that have been well tested over long periods of time by many people, that are directed toward. There's different application modalities. So there's probes you can hold to direct the frequency into the whole body. There's TINS pads that can connect to a very specific spot. There's plasma laser nodes that can go in your nostrils or in your mouth, or there's a larger plasma laser that will emit the frequency outward number of feet. You can watch things change in a microscope while emitting these frequencies. You can watch.
So does it send out frequencies, or does it pick up frequencies?
Well, it actually can do both. So you do what's called a biofeedback scan. You would see what frequencies you're picking up. Well, what are they? Oh, I'd like to eliminate those. Then you apply those frequencies. And then you get into what's called scalar technology. Because in Western science, they say, like, if I induce 15 hertz and I split the positive and negative in a wire, and then I recombine them, that would cancel that frequency out. They call it canceling out, which makes sense to our linear minds. But what actually happens is the same thing that happens in Qigong medicine when you connect heaven energy, the positive, with earth energy, the negative. You are a frequency. So you're that frequency. When you connect them and disconnect them, recombine them is what I'm saying.
Okay.
You're doing that
split, yeah.
Then they call that in Western medicine canceling out, because they're ignoring quantum mechanics, right? What actually is happening is creating what's called a scalar field. And this is actually becoming such commonplace technology because of its use in the military and certain industries, unfortunately. But I would look into that if I were you. But
wait, let me write that down. What must I write down?
SCALAR.
SCALAR.
So what's really interesting about this type of energy is that it's unvectorized. So you have scalar fields, scalar energy, and vectorized energy. And vectorized means it has a direction, a trajectory, right? Scalar is everywhere in all directions at the same time. And this is what we know as change or manifestation energy in like the metaphysics world.
It sounds aggressive.
Yeah. Well, it's not. It's how everything works. It's how everything is transformed. So I call scalar fields the compost of the ether, and I call compost the scalar waves of the ground because they transmutate elements to a higher potential form, and that's even where the word scalar comes from, is ascension, to scale, to climb, to ascend. Nothing is static. Iron oxide will only be iron oxide for a brief window of time, and it will transmutate to another element. A soil sample is just a snapshot of the elements fluxing in that moment, just like a blood sample, a blood work sample. That's why you never go get blood work and determine your status of health by that. You might get blood work every day over 6 months and come to some sort of mean of conclusion, but you never go get a soil sample or a blood work and then go determine the status of your whole shit. That's like looking at taking a painting and singling out one little dot in a massive painting and thinking you know what the painting is. Well, I see a foot. It's a whole 50 people on a boat.
Yeah, there's
You
a
know what
lot
I
of
mean?
stuff.
Yeah. So
Oh, goodness.
perspective is always there, even in yin and yang. And we may have touched on this before, but when you go into a 2-story house, the floor
Yeah,
is yin to the ceiling, but on the second level, the floor is yang to the ceiling before, it's on what's on top. It's positioning. Everything is relative. So it's fixed. So even the most yang thing we know, like the sun, will flux at some point. It's inevitable.
it's all relevant.
It's all relevant. Yeah. And it happens in our cells. It happens and our cells are circuits. That's why when you say, oh, everything we talk about comes back to polarity, well, that's because everything is created by polarities. And even that word has been kind of used in our modern English. You used it earlier in our conversation. When polarization refers to a relationship.
Yeah.
It doesn't refer to one or the other. I think that word should be changed in our vernacular to unipolarized. So you're fixed in one polarity if you're fixed in one way. If it's polarized, there's a relationship between the two
Yeah.
poles. So that's just language getting, used how it gets used. But we all know what we mean. So that's all that really matters. But everything does come back to that because everything is that. And that's what I always try to bring it back to in my videos with the yin yang whiteboards and all that. It's like you want to look at water flow, you want to look at breathing, you want to look at how soil works, you want to look at how your electrical appliances work. It doesn't matter. It's all the same principle applied with different techniques, applied with
So how
different
do you
materials.
sorry, just to bring it back to how do you kill weeds
Oh yeah.
with
So my experiment
with frequencies?
was an expansion. Well, before we get into the experiment, it's well known that like an opera singer, this is a pretty classic metaphor here, can break glass with a
Mm,
tone. And what she's
yeah,
done is she's matched basically probably an 11th harmonic of the frequency of silica or whatever the glass is made of, and she's destroyed it with itself.
made
And
it
this
vibrate.
this
Yeah.
again is this very scalar idea. The world, we're taught a very explosive model of the universe. Everything that happens is explosive. The Big Bang, everything boom, boom. How do you build something? Oh, you blow a bunch of shit up first. How do you build a nation? Oh, you blow another nation up, take its shit. Everything is so explosive, but everything that's truly created divinely is implosive. So like a vortex is an implosion. Everything is implosive. That's creative. Qigong is implosive. It's imploding. That's creative power, not destructive power. And like power is having the ability to destroy and choosing not to use it. And that's that, you know what I mean? That's because if otherwise you have weakness. Or a lot of people will confuse like gentleness and weakness. It's like, well, gentleness is having the ability to kill and choosing to let live. And weakness is just not even having the ability
Yeah,
to do
it's
either.
What's that? It's another cliche that we can use. It's better to
Yeah.
be a warrior in a
The
garden.
garden and the gardener in a war. Yeah,
There
exactly.
we go.
So yeah, you know, that's exactly right. So what were we talking about? Yeah, this whole idea of destroying something.
How to kill
Yeah.
weeds.
So what we're really doing is not killing weeds, but sending electromagnetic signals to the seeds of the potential weeds to stay dormant. So we're not killing anything in this case. You could possibly in this same way with the right frequency. But this is based on an experiment done back in the 90s. Um, Phil Callahan, again, who wrote about the Irish Round Towers, he wrote about it. But the experiment was really done by, I believe, an Australian farmer. And he had developed tiller tines that would vibrate at 720 hertz when they would vibrate through the ground. And that's just done by really refining the dimensions and the
Wow.
motor and all. Yeah, everything had to vibrate, right?
That's very specific.
Very specific. Yeah. So, and this was his whole point when he used this, when he invented this to send the weed seeds into dormancy. Everything receives electromagnetic signals. I mean, light is an electromagnetic signal. Some of them we can see, a lot of them we can't. So, you know, everything operates on these signals. Our circadian rhythm is that signals.
Mm.
Flowers open and close, pine cones open and close based on light. I mean, everything is electromagnetic signaling of one form or another. Our ability to do this podcast is electromagnetic signaling. The reason your phone works is electromagnetic signaling. Um, the reason people feel the presence of another person is electromagnetic signaling from the heart to heart. Uh, so he found over lots of previous theoretical research, and then by actually applying the knowledge and making the device and using it as a farmer, that it worked. Phil Callahan found out about it, actually traveled to Australia, measured with an oscilloscope and some other devices that he invented, the frequencies and the waveforms and all the different dynamic information about this, and determined, yes, it's putting off 720 hertz. And sure enough, these fields are weed free again and again, you know, because when you do experiments, it can't be one and done. It can't be with agriculture because you have
No.
too many compounding variables. Agriculture experiments can only be done by someone who already has such a good base of knowledge of that space, of that particular soil and area, and are growing a lot of the same things. Even if they grow 30 different crops, they're growing them all year long. Because, like most of your monocrop farmers, you know, even if they're planting every year and even if they're a farmer for 30 years, they really only planted 30 times and
Mm.
harvested 30 times. That's nothing compared to
Yeah.
the small farmers. We're like planting and harvesting, planting constantly. So we get a lot more data, a lot more variety of crops. So back to this experiment, I thought, and Phil Callahan even suggested in his book in the 90s, if you could figure out a way to do it, you could just generate this frequency mechanically, electrically, with this frequency. Oh, I know how to do that. So I took it out there and I took a frequency generator and I used my electroculture ground line that's running under the plants as a conductor. Again, you could see that as electrical engineer, like, well, that's going to shunt the signal, but this is EMF. This isn't electricity like you're running a power to a appliance.
EMF,
Electromagnetic
electromagnetic
frequency.
frequency. Okay.
Yes, and frequency in trains. So there's frequency entrainment. So like, you know, that's why people use PEMF devices, pulsed electromagnetic frequency devices, to heal, because they're going to be in proximity of it. It's generating a frequency that they're hoping to entrain. That's how water is imprinted. It has to be erased first with an implosive vortex, and then you can generate frequency into water of whatever you choose. You could generate nitrogen, 1014 hertz is elemental nitrogen, and you can have a nitrogen fertilizer. Because, like I said, it's all about the vibration and the polarity that's set up by something, its effectiveness. It's well known, like people who operate the Spooky 2 devices
Spooky.
also there's a lab in the UK.
I really feel like they need to change that word because every time you say the spooky two,
Well,
then
it's
I
popular.
feel
You're
like
gonna
no, I get that it's popular, but I
yeah
feel
yeah
like
yeah yeah.
as soon
Well,
as you
there's
say
other
spooky
devices you
two,
can
then
use, but
I feel like you're gonna put something down and you're gonna
yeah.
catch a ghost.
So there's a lab, there's a place in the UK called Berkana Labs, and they make equipment that goes with the spooky, like imprinting devices. So you take like, let's say a medication you're prescribed. Like a lot of people do this with a heart medication, nitroglycerin,
Yeah.
and because it's expensive, so they buy it one time and they use the transfer plate and they transfer the vibration of the medication into water and they just drink the water and they use that same every time.
What?
Yeah, this is old. People do this all over the world every day.
Wait.
Like
Okay. Wait.
people rely on this. This is not like, you know.
Explain it to me. That's an idiot. You take this medication.
Well, it's the same thing as like either an actual physical tiller time creating a vibration. That would be like the pill, taking it in the body, generating the frequency. Same effect. That's like generating it into the water. The water imprints that frequency, and you consume the water. You know, and I mean, this is not. It has anything to do with anything I sell or promote. It's just a
Wow.
concept. Yeah, this is equipment I have and use, and
Okay, but
people all over
wait.
the world use it.
How does okay? So obviously, me, Philip Taylor, idiot.
No, you just don't know about it. I mean,
I just don't know about it. But okay,
yeah,
how does the water keep this frequency? Or do
memory.
you change? Do you
Well, water has
change?
memory. Like, have you studied the work of Masaru Emoto,
No.
the Japanese? He's pretty popular. I mean, he's pretty popular. Like, he's all over the internet. I mean,
But
he
I
did
feel
all
like
this work with the memory of water. You can
for
speak to water and speak different things, and it has different somatic vibrations that are visible based upon what you speak to it. If you speak hate to water, it'll be unorganized. If you speak love to water, it's organized, perfectly symmetrical patterns. Same way, if you play certain music and vibrate it into water or sand, it'll make chaotic patterns. If you play other music, it'll make harmonious patterns.
but water is ever flowing. It's moving. It's how does it keep that certain frequency
Well, water is only
without
flowing because of
changing?
electromagnetism in the first place. I mean, that's the only reason it's flowing in the first place is because it's a
But
living,
water in
sentient.
okay. So let's say
Yeah,
water in this container,
that has
right?
a memory of wherever it came from, and now you've stagnated it,
Yes,
right?
so it's in this. So
Yeah.
I measure my nitroglycerin.
Uh huh.
What did we say?
That's right.
Nitroglycerin. Yeah.
Nitroglycerin.
And then I convert this into a frequency and put it into this.
Yeah.
So in my mind,
After you erase
frequency,
the previous memory,
yeah, okay. So,
just to be
but
clear.
in my mind, frequency is movement or
Okay.
not.
Well, everything is always moving. Even things that appear still are vibrating. There's nothing that isn't constantly moving.
Okay, but now if
How
okay,
fast
so
can you perceive it?
I imprint that movement, that frequency into this container of water.
Yep.
But then if I do this, is that frequency still in the water?
No, because it has to be vortex to erase it. Now, I will say, most people who do this, they do drink it immediately. They're not trying to work
Okay.
against
So
themselves.
it's not held
Yeah,
somewhere and then okay. I get
drinking
that.
immediately, you know. So and like you say, there's always going to be a way to make something more or less effective.
I'm
Just
sorry if
because
I'm asking, I don't know if I'm asking stupid
no,
questions now.
no, I mean, there's no stupid question, man. It's just the unknown or the known. Like, I mean, these are questions that I'm hearing for the first time. I'm asking myself them. Like, yeah, that I mean, you could always. It's just like if you were trying to set up a nice line of dominoes that you're planning to collapse and watch it, and you're gonna have that
Yeah.
satisfying moment. Well, it's easier to do if someone's not stomping around.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't do it. Just means it's harder to do when someone's making it more difficult to complete your task. So, for most people, they'll never try it, so they'll never actually know. That's the if enough people, I guess, tried it to come to a conclusion of no, this didn't work, but you never see this. You never see that phenomena
I guess
because
it
some people
makes,
live in the world of nothing or the world of something, you know.
yeah. I guess it makes sense if you put it into soil, if you put it into farming, where your soil is a constant. It's there. I'm not doing this with the soil.
Maybe when you till,
No, but I mean in your setup where you've
uh-huh.
got a greenhouse
Yeah.
and you might have weeds growing,
Hmm.
and you put a frequency in there, then it'll do its job without me shaking up your greenhouse.
And it would probably do its job even if I went and hoed it. That would be the equivalent. Like, because you prep the soil for planting, right?
Yeah.
You might harrow it or till it or whatever you want to do. You plant it, and then typically you might have to hoe it twice, like in this greenhouse case with like an oscillating hoe. Um, Very detailed work, very time consuming work. I don't hate doing it, but it's very time consuming. Um, but I didn't have to hoe after running these frequencies. I haven't hoed it.
It's
So I
almost
say,
Christmas. It's almost Christmas, so you need a ho ho ho.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Good one. Good one. So
Dad
I
joke.
say save
Dad
myself
joke.
hour. Yeah, exactly. Dad joke for the win. So I save myself for my wife, you know, time in that, you know. And there's really no wrong answer. If it doesn't work, it's like, well, then there's something I learned, you know.
How many stuff? Okay, this is not. How many things do you try that don't work?
I can't think of one. Um, but I choose my things pretty.
Okay, how many? Okay, let me ask the question
I
better.
get results I don't expect.
How many frequencies, for argument's sake, do you know before doing this? Do you know? Okay, I need to go to 175 megahertz or whatever. I don't.
Yeah, there's
Do you know you
calibration.
have to go to specific frequencies, or do you go, let's try this range of frequencies and see what works?
I've done a lot of that type of scanning, they call it, with more medical type of applications.
Yeah.
With the, I actually am at the beginning stages of working on some proprietary frequency scans for agriculture in the same way they have them for the human body for this very
Okay.
purpose. But I am typically dealing with like one frequency at a time, or maybe a pair of frequencies that make a beat frequency between them. So, like if
On
you run 300 and 315, what happens between there is 15.
and what time range do you put on those tests? Do you go
I
like,
come, yep. So, I one of my videos, I explain this, and basically, there's mathematical patterns that will unfold if you allow yourself to see them. And I develop the time durations based on the frequency itself and the breakdown of certain mathematical patterns within that. So, like if it's divisible by a certain number and then it comes to that number, like if I divide it by 12 and it comes to 12, I'll run it for 12 minutes.
golden equations?
Pretty much, I'll run it at 12 minutes. So it's things like that, you know. Just like I'll use like sacred cubits to measure my antenna components.
Yeah.
It's biogeometry, and it creates harmonious spaces, and it's also a component in feng shui. Setting up your spaces is all about energy flow. It's not about what does it look like, or you know, I mean, it ends up looking beautiful because everything that's beautiful on the outside starts from inner beauty, and so it's just a reflection of beauty or order or heart order. It feels good to the heart, you know, because it's got order to it, order elementally, universal order, like magnetic flow and current and wind flow and things like that, things that are actually parameters, things that are worth quantifying more than, you know, kind of imaginary numbers that we come up with for certain things,
Yeah.
like which are okay too. I just
Okay, so we keep coming back to polarizations or poles and sort of ratios and stuff, and you use a certain ratio for your antennas, and it's, I think you said the numbers like 12, right? Or the qubits.
The sacred qubit, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this has got nothing to do with nothing.
Yeah.
But do you not think that that is indicative of that we might live in a simulation? Because you find
Yeah,
certain numbers everywhere.
sure. I mean, I've talked about this quite a bit with different people. You know, okay. I think it comes down to your view of what that means. Because the general nuance that I catch from people is, oh, we're in this simulated matrix hologram. Nothing is real. It's all, well, what is more real than light?
Yeah, well,
I don't know. I don't
whatever
know of
we,
anything more real than light. So if it's all it's all light projections anyway, hitting different densities or different densities of light perceived at different speeds, because there is no fixed speed of light. And
let me ask you this.
mhm,
A fish tank that I've
mhm,
got in my house,
mhm.
is that not a simulation?
I guess again, that's it's all going to be perspective based. For me, it's not a simulation because you have to have a point of relativity that is unsimulated. So can you show me what unsimulation looks like?
Well,
Not
that's a
you
fish.
personally,
That's that little fish in a river in nature somewhere.
but not
Ah,
if the bigger picture is a simulation too. And what if there's a bigger
no, but
picture? What if we're a fishbowl for a bigger simulation? It can never stop.
that's
It's Russian dolls.
it's turtles all the way
It's
down.
turtles all the way. It's Russian dolls. Yeah, it's like, so I get the point. I get the question. For me personally, I don't I mean I don't know, but I guess my real point would be like I don't find it pertinent. Simply because if it is, then what's your plan? Like, what's the plan once you figure that out? What you gonna do? Because if you're not already doing it, you ain't
Well,
gonna do it then.
I guess this comes back to where we sort of do not live on the same street. Where I tend to go on the outline, and you tend to go, well, this is what we're doing. Because I often wonder if you see the same numbers over and over and over again, like with qubits, there's a interesting thing of where people can't randomize numbers, because you always in your mind tend to go, if I ask a person to randomize 40 numbers, then you'll find a pattern in there somewhere, because we always go 20.745 or 75.745. There's a human mind works in patterns. And I
Mhm.
always wonder, when you look at let's make it now a very tinfoil hat. If
Yeah.
you look at like the pyramids,
Which one?
um,
Which ones?
all of them.
The fake ones in Egypt or the real ones in America?
All of them. Then
Because
you
the
go,
ones in Egypt are baloney.
uh, shit, we're gonna need another 3 hours to go
That
through
they
this.
want us to have an idea of a fixed speed of light, so they reverse engineer those pyramids based on this fixed speed of light to put our physics in a box, to make us think that we're not possible of things outside of these laws of
Who
physics.
who who are they?
Oh, the same people who who promote like the theater of war, typically banking industrial complexes. I mean, no one make believe. Like, no, I'm not talking about like intergalactic controllers or anything like that. I'm about other people. We could get specific, but
We can get specific. I've
but
got nothing
there
but time.
but I mean there's no need, but I mean there's no
Yeah,
need to,
there's no
because
need.
we
No.
all know who we're talking about.
I always just wonder, when you see stuff like that, uh, where I'd like, let's bring it back to qubits. When you realize in your line of work, let's call it that, there's certain numbers. Number 12 works over here, over here, over here, and over here. Then I always wonder why. Why is 12 the perfect number for that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess everything has its biogeometry. I mean, you know, in gematria and in kind of esoteric numerology, people look for the 3 and the 6 and the 9 so that they can locate all the other numbers, because those are the parameters of coordination. It's the same way with the compass. I mean, like, east used to be, the compass is a relative layout based on where you are. It's not a fixed position. It's based on where the sun rise. So you would, wherever you were, where you saw the sunrise, that was your east.
Yeah.
And
If you go east far enough, you're gonna go west.
and like, exactly. And so that's why, like, the Latin word is drawing a blank. So you got Australis for south, Borealis for north, Occidental for west, and Oriental for east, because it was east to them. But that's showing the dominance of kind of like the whole Gregorian culture and the Hellenization of the world. I mean, it's all been put in a really small little box of allowance,
It's
and
all
anything
relative.
that veers out of that box is looked at as, pseudoscience, paranormal, all these dumb words that just mean you actually did some work. And so, you know, I think that all these things are reverse engineered. They're not like the staple of, because I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, in the circle of people that I know, a lot of reverence for them Egyptian pyramids, boy. I mean, I like the art. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think Egyptian history is super interesting, but you just got to be geographically in the right place, not over there. But that culture of pyramid builders came out of the Americas. And those pyramids in Egypt look nothing like the rest of the pyramids in the world, which are step pyramids. Those perfectly smooth pyramids, I don't know. But whether that's true or not, again, kind of doesn't matter at this point. You know, like, I wouldn't get bent out of shape if it was not true or whatever.
So,
Historical paradigms are just there.
so what do you reckon? You reckon that like the Incas and the Mayans and those oaks were the first ones?
Yeah, culture went the other way.
Have you seen um you know who Graham, is it Graham Hancock? Graham,
I know the name. I know he has a series.
yeah,
I
on
haven't seen it though.
Netflix.
I haven't seen it.
His belief is basically that civilization is much older than what we think. Predates to like, he reckons it all came to like a bit of a standstill around about, I think, 11.5 to 12,500 years ago, because of some other cataclysmic event, and that we as a humanity, or whatever you want to call it, used to be much more civilized back in the day, just on a different sort of path line. And
Got cataclysmed into the Stone Age and then rebuilt out of that, basically.
yeah, and just basically the people that knew how to build all this shit basically all died, and we were knocked back to a bottleneck of like 6,000 people on Earth, and then had to rebuild. How do you see this happening? Because I always wonder, because everything like the age of everything, he actually has a line that he uses quite a lot, and he says shit just keeps getting older, because we can more accurately predate stuff than what we use, and obviously we find new stuff that's a lot older than we thought it was.
Mm,
I think the oldest, like, sort of like modern day human that we see as modern day human now is like 150,000 years old now, that they found somewhere in France, I think. I might be
crazy.
wrong. Don't Google it.
No,
Um,
crazy. Yeah.
but it's, I think, our biggest problem, it and it is, so it doesn't really matter, but it's fun to think of. I think our biggest
Sure.
problem is we don't understand time. We don't understand numbers bigger than 100, because we only live to be 100.
Mm, yeah.
So it's like, for a normal mid of the range person, if you give him $1 billion or billion rand or billion euros or billion whatever currency, that person doesn't understand how much money that is. You've got a shitload of money.
Yeah.
And it's the same when we talk about the passing of time in years, where 100 years is our cap, 25 years is our cap, most likely. To say 1,000 years ago, we don't understand how long that is.
Mm.
To say 150,000 years ago, we don't understand how long of a time period
It's
that
hard.
is.
It's hard to conceptualize. Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest barrier to entry, I almost want to call it, to understanding how we've changed over years.
Yeah, when it comes to like geology and so, I mean, there's things that are probably much older, and then there's things that are probably much newer than this. I mean, it's just there's so many variables. Like, when they do sediment dating, it's like, well, all those sediments could have quickly accumulated in a big flood. So to say that it took so many thousands or hundreds of thousands of years for those things to build up, that's not necessarily true, you know? Um, So I guess it's just really important to approach each situation specifically individually and not decide that you already know certain things, because then things get based on all these shaky foundations
Yeah.
again and again and again. And if it happens long enough, these things get accepted as, even if they're not scientific law per se, because even those aren't really, it's just common observation. Um, so, so many things have been like retorted or refined or repealed, over the last, even our memorable lifetimes, or things that we thought were impossible are readily possible. Or, I don't know, that there's really no way to time too. The way we look at it is just so objective and like based on your personal realities and how your time is being filled. And man, those are variables that I don't think anyone's mastered.
Time is difficult because, I mean, you've got a kid. If
Hmm.
if I my kid's 3 years old, if I tell him I'll give you something next week, he doesn't. That for him, that's
It's
20 years in the
eternity.
future.
Yeah.
That's eternity. He doesn't understand that. For an 85-year-old, next week is that,
Pretty quick. Yep. Yeah.
because his relevance in that time is, it's
Yeah.
it's mind
Yeah.
blowing if you go and think of what a day is in someone's life, depending on the age. If you put it into percentage wise, it changes so much,
Yeah.
and it's
Small percentage.
yeah,
Yeah.
dude. We're gonna go off on 75 different tangents.
I
Tell
know.
everyone where they can find you online, where they
Okay.
can send you a
Yes.
message and order all your stuff.
So, thefertilecurrent.com is my website. You can buy antennas. I have lots of information, pictures, diagrams, installation videos. You can reach me through that website on email if you have questions or need assistance if you've bought equipment. I'm definitely there to help people. I've been at this point since we've spoke. I've helped people in many continents, many places get their stuff set up. Um, Helped a couple people in Indonesia for building this really nice resort and installing some gardens with the
Oh
Electroculture,
wow.
helping them get their accessories together because there's certain things they were having trouble sourcing there. So I'm basically just trying to be here as a resource. Most of the people or everyone else that's really offering anything in this electroculture realm isn't really applying it. Like they're not farming or growing anything. It's more of like this endeavor just to sell a product, or maybe it's out of interest, but I would, I pride myself on being out here actually using it and actually able to help people apply it to almost any situation, whether it's a farm that's huge, a backyard garden, any scenario, even indoors. I mean, I've come up with creative solutions for nurseries, all kind of situations. So basically, yes, thefertilecurrent.com, and then I have YouTube at the Fertile Current and Instagram at the Fertile Current. I post videos on there. Try to stay up on it as much as I can. Try to share information as much as I can. I'm not trying to gatekeep information. Sometimes it's just me sharing experiments, I try not to draw a lot of hard conclusions because that's not the point of it. Like sustainable agriculture, everybody wants to talk about it, but that includes sustaining your own interest and your own development as a person as you do agriculture. So it's like, I see a lot of young farmers. I don't consider myself that at this point, but like maybe when I started, like they get real fixed in a real certain way, and like you just see them not break out of it or trying anything new, at least anything, maybe a new tool or something, but not anything truly new paradigm wise. And there's there's so much to try. And the thing about it is that being a farmer for a living, like, I would still experiment, but a lot of this stuff is based on such proven technique that it's an experiment within a bunch of already acquired knowledge and skill. And so we're applying this stuff to be a prolific producing farm. And so that's still our goal. It's not just to like sell the equipment, you know what I mean? So like that's kind of the difference, kind of what we bring to the table that's different, is that we're here to actually do this work with this equipment and help others succeed in actually growing whatever it is they're trying to grow with these devices.
And I could just add that you guys do actually reply to messages and emails, and it's not that a message is going to get lost in the DMs or an email is going to get lost. You guys actually look at it, and that's I feel like that's great. You are out there to help people.
Yep, I reply to virtually. I mean, unless it's just total nonsense, I'm replying to it. You know what I mean? So if you have a question or concern, like really, we can figure it out. A lot of people I feel like are hesitant sometimes to start on the path on electroculture because they're intimidated by the data or by, oh, how am I going to do it? I got these limitations or this, that, or the other, but there's literally a way to do it for everybody. So, it's just experience, and like any trade, you learn the tricks, you learn the equipment, you learn the accessories, and you learn how to do it, and then you can share that.
I must say that the scalability of it all is amazing to me, because you can do it on a very small scale or a relatively big scale, and that I think that is quite interesting. The
larger you scale it up, the more cost effective it actually is. Because you can take one antenna and run one ground line south to north, inevitable distance, 500 miles, one antenna, one line. Your east to west influence is still going to be approximately 20 feet. So if you have huge fields and you can orient your antennas, especially if you can orient your antennas and utilize the length of the space south to north or north to south, then you can utilize these antennas and cover vast amounts of areas with a handful of antennas. It's really ultra conducive to large agriculture. Some people have caught on, and it's gonna catch on more, I believe.
Well, I hope people fucking just flock to your Instagram and your YouTube and all of that. And dude, I cannot put words to how interesting it is for me to talk to you. It is truly amazing, and I can just say thank you.
Oh, thank you, Philip. I always enjoy my time with you, bro. And I have a WhatsApp now, so.
Have you got a WhatsApp?
I do, so I have to connect. Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to sort that out. But listen, yeah, buddy, thank you. This has been great.
Thank you, Philip. Much love, brother.
I want to say what? Bless up.
Yeah, bless up. That's it. Exactly.
There we go. Cheers, bud.